Welcome to another edition of Drugs, Crime, and Politics, brought to you by the Drug Policy Forum of Texas. I'm your host, Buford Terrel, and with me tonight, my co-host, Bindu Nair. We have with us also Clayton Jones, Vice President of Houston NORML, and Clayton's going to talk to us tonight about the upcoming 420 Fest, which we're cheating and putting on 419 this year.
Yes.
And also about his recent trip to California, where, among other things, he attended the Oaksterdam Cannabis College and the marijuana therapeutics. Okay. But first, I think it's important that we mention the upcoming 420 Fest, which, as I said, will be on April the 19th. It starts at 6:20 p.m. or 6 p.m. and it's at the Last Concert Cafe at 403 Nance. And it looks like that there are going to be 4 or 5 good bands and several speakers and an evening of celebration for all. And this is combined with a NORML membership drive and fun with no D razor. So tell us a little bit more about 420, Clayton.
Well, 420, we've been planning it for the last year. And as always, we have it down at the 420 Last Concert Cafe. Yeah. And we've got some great bands this year. There's going to be a lot of interesting speakers. And it's usually a very good, fun time. There's drinks, there's partying, there's a big outside patio, and it's quite relaxed.
And usually in the past there have been a few vendors and things.
We're going to have BC Glass down there displaying their glassware and selling it. We'll always have Dwayne Jones displaying all his wonderful information that he has acquired through the years. The man could build a museum just with the stuff that he has.
Actually, we're talking about doing that. Not just with his, but building a fairly large archive of all of the various drug law reform efforts in the Houston area. So.
What we need to do is get some donate us some space, frontal space for a building.
We're working really to put it in with an academic library where it will be preserved and available. But I noticed several bands are going to be here this year.
Yes. Let's see. Sean Reefer and the Resin Valley Boys, Guy Schwartz, New Jack Hippies, Cosmic Pearl, Lone Star Porn Star, Opie Hendricks, and the Texas Tall Boys. I'm not so much into the music, so I imagine they're all good bands. They've always been great for our festival.
And I think it's also good to mention that this is a fundraiser. It's their annual benefit, so I think it's $10 to get into the door, which is your contribution to the NORML organization, and I think that gets you a membership as well, an annual membership.
And I'll have a bunch of these books there. Let me open it up. It's a brand new book coming out. It's called Treating Yourself, and it talks about different ailments, how cannabis can help, and what types of cannabis can actually help. It's a very good book. It's put together by patients, for medical cannabis.
Did you grab that while you were at the Cannabis Therapeutics conference?
I got a box of them to bring to our outing Saturday, so that y'all, they're free, but we have no problem with you donating $5 for one. And then we're going to have some O'Shaughnessy's. This is a paper that's put out in California. It's basically medical stuff.
For those of you that aren't familiar with the name, Dr. O'Shaughnessy was a doctor with the British Army stationed in India. And in 1939, he published a real world-shaking article in a British medical journal about the use of Indian hemp or cannabis for medical treatment in India. And that was the introduction of medical cannabis into the Western world. And in just a few years, it was becoming one of the most widely used drugs all across Europe, but particularly in England and the United States. So Dr. O'Shaughnessy is really the father of medical marijuana in the Western world.
Right, and even though it had been used for thousands of years in India, it wasn't until
I wouldn't say thousands of years, but 1,000.
Well, if you read any, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, or if you read Jack Hare or anything, they will say thousands of years. But, it's hard to say that whether it's been documented or not. But with Todd McCuria, which is, I guess, he documented all of O'Shaughnessy's works, and he compiled in this book, which Clay was so nice to bring back from one of the conferences, I guess. It chronicles every clinical report, every scientific report from 1839 to 1972. And this is before there were restrictions in the U.S. and all over the world. So they actually have, animal research, human clinical trials, open trials. So this is going to be kind of an all-around medical compendium on cannabis research for the last, 2 centuries.
One of the sad things is that in the United States, from the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act in 1939 until roughly the middle of the 1990s, cannabis research virtually came to a total standstill in the United States. So luckily in the past 10 years, it's been pretty well revived, and it did continue in other parts of the world even during that period of time. But during the period from 1939 to the middle 90s, when most of the important work in pharmacology in this country was going on, cannabis got left by the wayside.
So in the beginning of this book, they describe that they're starting to replace it with the opiates, and they're finding out that opiates are kind of being able to replace medical cannabis, and that's when it starts, falling by the wayside as well.
Well,
interestingly, Donald Abrams, which is someone who was, I guess, one of the key speakers at that conference, he is been kind of at the forefront of the medical cannabis research now, and he had something to do with, he had a study with the HIV/AIDS wasting disease. But now there is a call for patients and he's starting a new clinical trial, and they need patients for a chronic pain study. And that's previously, morphine and opiates were recommended for that. But they're finding out that things such as MS, ALS, and spinal cord injury, basically nervous system diseases, opium just isn't working. It doesn't work on the same pathways as this inflammatory diseases. Yeah, and more than anything, that's chronic pain is something that's excruciating. So
basically, cannabis is used more for peripheral nerve pain, which would include things like phantom limb. It would include MS,
peripheral nerve injury.
Yeah.
But MS can also start in the central nervous system as well, and that's why it's so devastating.
Yeah.
So anyways, and that's where
the
spinal cord
opioids
injury.
are still probably better for most central nervous system pains.
Well, I actually do central nervous system pain studies, so I kind of do a little bit of research on this. Anyways, Dr. Abrams is doing a study, and they're calling for patients. It's obviously in the Northern California area. So if you know anyone in that area, if you'll be in that area for an extended period of time, they're looking for I guess, subjects. And you can find out more information at Americans for Safe Access's website, which is safeaccessnow.org.
Yeah, but you were talking, cannabis became very widely spread during the 1840s, 50s. But one of the problems is that the active ingredients in cannabis are oil-based rather than water-soluble. And with the techniques of the time where they were basically trying to prepare it as elixirs, in
tinctures
alcohol
sometimes,
solutions to be taken orally, it's almost impossible to get a regulated, controlled dosage with an oil-based drug. Even with the same person from day to day, the way they take up the oil-based medication is highly variable.
I think that's kind of the problem they're having with Marinol.
Yeah, and Marinol's the same thing as an oral dosage.
Right.
So over the time, cannabis fairly well dropped out of the picture. In 1914, when the government did studies in preparation for the Harrison Narcotic Act, when they examined drugstores and pharmacies, they only found about 7 cannabis preparations that were being sold, and most of them were externally used for corn plasters. So they didn't see any reason to include it in the Harrison Act. Once again, in 1937, although it was still available, it was still included in the pharmacology, cannabis was not really widely used. It was only in the 1970s, particularly with cancer, and then in the 80s with AIDS and AIDS wasting, that it came to the forefront again. And this mainly is a smoked preparation. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, I have a comment, a question.
Okay.
Martin Luther King is famous for making the statement of the fact that all men are created equal, assuming, of course, he meant all mankind. That being the fact, and it is a fact, an irrevocable fact, my question is, that being true, where did one person get the right to dictate to another what it can and can't do? And what it wants to do does not violate the rights, the physical rights of another.
Exactly. That's
I think maybe a good answer to your question comes from Thomas Jefferson, who once upon a time said something to the effect, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it's a sorry pass if a government tries to tell a person what he can or cannot eat or what he can or cannot put in his body. So you're on the side with one of the American greats when you ask that question.
And when people are so suppressed, as we see in California, that they have risen up, they have voted it in twice, and the people just don't tolerate it. I mean, this attitude of law enforcement and everybody else that we have here is just shouldn't be tolerated anymore. We all need to unite, and if California can do it, and 11 other states beyond California can do it, there's no reason we can't do it right here. First we have to make our elected officials responsible for what we want.
Right, exactly. I think far too often people forget that we're the bosses of these legislators. People think that they're, these legislators are people on a pedestal or something, but no, we're the ones who should be making the calls for that. We're at a kind of a crucial stage of politics right now, and the more you talk to your legislators, the more you tell them what you want, the more they'll understand. Just because we're in Texas doesn't mean we can't get laws changed.
I'm kind of famous around here for saying that it's up to you to keep your Congress critters and related animals in line. But I'm also thinking in a slightly different point that it becomes a matter of education. If you look at any politician, unfortunately, his primary concern is getting reelected. Mm-hmm. And it's a concern that runs primarily on fear. And the reason why politicians are reluctant to vote the way they know they should vote is that they're afraid it will cost them votes. So part of what they need to find out from voters is that, hey, medical marijuana, for instance, is something favored by, according to whichever poll you look at, around 70% of the population. And if you vote for something that 70% of the population's in favor of, it's going to earn votes, not cost votes. The problem is they hear the high, loud, hysterical voices on the other side yelling, crime, 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 morals, morals,
Save
morals.
the children, save the children.
And
yeah.
it scares them away from doing what they know is right. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Well, good evening, my friends.
Good evening.
I don't have anything in specific to say, but, you know, I've become very politically active in the last 8 years, and I am a 60-year-old man, and I just see no hope at all. And I really want to acknowledge you guys for the work you're doing, but, you know, I think the fear-mongering that has been imposed on our country and the lack of understanding of reality, you know, I just don't think it's going to happen, what you guys are talking about, a sane and productive view of reality, you know, and so I want you to keep going on with what you're doing, but I just believe that we're screwed.
Okay. Thank you very much.
There's another quote that it's never disbelieved that a small group of like-minded, committed citizens will change something, because that's exactly who will.
You know, you hear so much grumbling from people, but yet we don't get unification of people coming together. This is what we need.
Okay, we need to take a break right now, and we'll continue this when we come back.
We have our 7th annual 420 Fest membership drive and fundraiser on April 19th. Dean Becker of the Cultural Baggage Show will be master of ceremonies for a night of activism and celebration. Our featured speaker will be National NORML board member and host of the radio program Weekday Legal, attorney Norm Kidd. The musical guests we have lined up are Lone Star Porn Star, Opie Hendrix, Sean Reefer, Cosmic Pearl, the New Jack Hippies, and Liquidius. We'll also have arts and crafts from local merchants, as well as raffles to include items autographed by Tommy Chong and NFL great Mark Stepnoski. The Last Concert Cafe is located at 1403 Nance Street. That's April 19th, with doors opening at 6 p.m. Find out what you can do to help change marijuana laws in Texas at HoustonNORML.org. Sometimes when we have a problem, we only use one tool. It works pretty good most of the time, so we keep on using it. Pretty soon, when your only tool is a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. With prisons overflowing with nonviolent drug offenders, it's time to try some new tools. Drug prohibitionists beat the drum for more jail time, but that has been a self-defeating policy. If someone has a problem with drugs, they need medical help, not incarceration. The drug war is doing more harm than good, and it's time for a change. By reducing the consequences of prohibition, we can deal with the real issues involved in a rational drug policy. There are better tools. If you would like to help reduce the harm caused by the drug war, please visit our website at dpft.org.
Well, our last caller said that he was 60 years old and had been active politically for about 8 years. He's not quite as old as I am, and we'll leave that number out of the question. About 10 years ago, I was saying, well, I have marijuana legal in 5 years.
Oh, my gosh.
But I have noticed one thing this year. Barney Franks, the congressman from Massachusetts, has been regularly for almost 20 years been introducing a bill in Congress every session to legalize the possession of small amounts of marijuana. But there's been one big difference this year. He announced he's going to introduce his bill in the coming session, and the mainstream media picked up on this, and for the first time that I can remember, it's gotten a respectable play in the mainstream press. One other thing that showed up, this was a story that was unfortunately somewhat misleading. CBS, at least, and I don't know about the other networks, picked up a local story out of Colorado about the opening of the first medical marijuana dispensary in the state of Colorado, legal under state law. CBS didn't do their research. They carried it. It's perfectly legal to go in and buy your marijuana in this dispensary. They neglected to mention that the feds can still come in, but once again, it was approached as a straight news story, possibly even a little bit of positive spin to it. Am I being delusionally optimistic, or is a change taking place?
I don't know. In my Senate district convention, I had a needle exchange provision and the medical marijuana provision. And I went and I sat in that resolutions committee, and I waited there for them to call it up for action. And there were about six members. And when they called out the medical marijuana provision, of course, there was a little bit of snickering as if this was kind of a joke, but there were two people on that resolutions committee who not only were vocally in support of it, but before they even came to a vote or before I even had a chance to talk, were able to explain why medical marijuana is necessary, some of the symptoms it relieves, and they were very adamant about being able to get that provision passed without any support in the first place from me. And then when I talked about it some more, it was a unanimous vote in favor, and then it passed on the floor. So I really think that, we're going to get a little bit of seriousness here. It's coming into the mainstream.
I think things are starting to turn. People's attitudes are unifying. I mean, I look out my front door and I stand in front of my house. Out of the 12 houses I can see, 8 of them are people that I know are smokers.
3/4 majority.
And they're not.
No, they're
not teenage stoners.
No, they are. Some of them are engineers, self-employed. A good neighborhood. I mean, it's. I just see things starting to change. But the one thing I have seen that people are not changing about is my representative, Dwayne Bohack. He told me that he may change his opinion on medical marijuana if he got some handwritten letters.
Yeah.
And I have not been able to generate them from my neighborhood.
Well,
what's the area you live in? Can you say a general range or anything to kind of point them out?
Spring Branch.
Okay.
I've been saying for a couple of years, Clayton, that what we really need, and this is friends from the time when the ex-sheriff from Travis County that got to the legislature and changed his vote on what we really need is for every member of the Texas legislature to receive an in his office personal visit, and I somewhat cynically say from a medical marijuana patient who's a white-haired grandmother in a wheelchair, and make him tell her face-to-face why he won't vote for her medicine. It's a place where the people that could be the active politicians here have to be the ones affected the most, and that's the patients. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I have more of a comment than a question.
Okay.
And I figure that they should go ahead and just legalize it because I don't do it anymore myself. I smoked for like about 25, almost 30 years. And the only reason why I quit because of my job, get drug tests and stuff like that. But I don't think it should be a crime because you got too many people locked up in prison just behind, medical marijuana, stuff like that. And it was once upon a time when our drugs were legal. I'm not going to take too much of time. I just want you to go ahead and address that.
I'm not really sure what the question is, but it's unfortunate that it's illegal, and it's unfortunate that we're locking people up, and especially for a medication, essentially. If this were, 100 years ago, or even, I guess, 70 years ago, people wouldn't be locked up for the same exact medication.
Well, a couple of calls I've got on this show recently made me think about something. And as I've noticed letters to the editors across the country. A lot of people are hung up on the idea that they don't want to make bad drugs available, therefore they want to keep them against the law. But the key point is this: making something illegal does not make it unavailable. Marijuana is easier for kids to get today than alcohol is. Any of you, and I don't care how innocent of the drug culture you are, any of you could go out and in less than an hour's time, you can find some place to buy marijuana, cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, whatever suits your fancy. It's out there, it's on every street corner. Making it illegal doesn't make it unavailable. It just makes it dangerous, expensive, and it corrupts law enforcement and makes society in general more brutal because of the crime.
Yes, exactly. In California, they're finding out that abuse by underage people is going down in the areas that it's well regulated. Regulation, we've done a good job with tobacco, we've done a job with alcohol, with minors, and yeah, you're going to always find somebody that's going to be an idiot and buy alcohol for a minor.
To me, tobacco is probably the key thing. If we go to the 1940s or early 1950s, over half the adults in the United States use tobacco regularly. And because tobacco is what it is, that means that more than half the adults were addicted to it. It was in, I believe, 1958 that the Surgeon General first came out with a connection between cigarettes and lung cancer. Now, tobacco use has gone from being a majoritarian thing down to about 21 or 22% of the population. That's all been done through education. Nobody has ever gone to jail for possessing or smoking a cigarette. Now, that's probably about as low as you can push the figure, is 20-21%. And tobacco, unfortunately, still is our number one killer in this country. But we've done a whole lot better job with education in the legal market there than we have with all of the prohibition laws on the other drugs.
It's amazing how much of a decline there's been once you have that education and that kind of push of, oh, we found out how bad tobacco is for you, that it is one of the most addictive substances, and yet we're able to decrease the population's use by so much. Something that I read recently that called to mind, something that is becoming unavailable to students and our younger population, is financial aid after a criminal conviction or any type of possession conviction, and that's just an unfortunate, sad case to get duly punished.
Now students for a sane drug policy,
sensible drug
policy, have been pushing to get that removed from the law ever since it went into effect
since
about
its
10
inception.
years ago.
Right. In fact, that resolution on the Higher Education Act is what essentially created Students for Sensible Drug Policy in 1998, so I guess they're 10 years old this year. Right. Happy birthday. But so Students for Sensible Drug Policy basically needs your calls. They need people to call into your legislators. Just as handwritten letters work, it's just as easy to make a phone call. You can find your legislators' numbers by going to ssdp.org/call. Just type in your zip code, and you can make the call about Senate Bill 2767, which it's up to the judicial discretion of whoever's enforcing whether or not to take the penalty.
Federal.
These are both federal bills, yeah. And then House Bill 5157, which would fully repeal the penalty on the Higher Education Act that takes away the financial aid.
Let me throw another little bit of irony in here.
Okay.
Is that under that particular amendment to the financial aid bills, a student can lose their financial aid if they have a drug conviction. They can still get student aid if they've been convicted of murder or rape or armed robbery Only drug possession keeps them from getting student aid, huh?
In fact, it's on the FAFSA. There's only, for that conviction only, is there a question whether or not you've been convicted of a drug possession.
Yeah.
And even if you say NA or choose not to answer, you're still going to be penalized for your answer. So yeah, it's quite unfortunate. The bills are garnering a little bit more support. Ted Kennedy signed on to co-sponsor, I guess it's HR 5157, and so they need your calls, whether you're a student
Ted Kennedy
or...
would have sponsored the Senate bill, not the HR, which is a House resolution.
Okay, well, yeah, he's the Senate bill.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, he's co-sponsored that, so we're hopefully garnering more support and getting people out there to call in for it.
Well, there's another thing that happened this last year. When the Sentencing Commission recommended removing a large part of the discrepancy between crack and powder cocaine, the Congress voted to let that become effective. They also allowed it to be retroactive. So now we have two congressional actions easing the drug laws, and perhaps they will show that you don't have to be worried about losing your seat if you act sensibly. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, my name is Terry, and you made a great comment about tobacco just a while ago.
Yes.
Several months ago, my husband died of lung cancer from tobacco smoking. And he was 12 years old when he started to smoke, he said. And I'm thinking, you hit it on the nail, and I made an effort to say I'm going after the tobacco company, taking it to the elementary level and the high school level to let kids know smoking is horrendous. And when you see someone suffering from lung cancer, it's not a pretty picture. But you hit it on the nail.
Okay.
And I'd like to know, what can we do more to bring this even more to let our kids know it's dangerous?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I think we're doing a pretty good job there. I will admit that I'm one of those tobacco addicts still, and it probably will kill me someday. But you'd be surprised how many 5- and 6-year-old kids will walk up and say, you shouldn't do that, that will hurt you. Or how many parents I know that sneak outside to smoke so that their kids won't see them. We get the message across to the children early. It makes its mark. But then part of what I think happens is the kids become teenagers. They find out we lie to them about all of the other drugs, and that teaches them to unlearn what they knew about tobacco.
The tobacco commercials that they have are pretty right on. They show how many deaths, and they have it by expressing balloons or something like that, representing the population of how many deaths from tobacco smoking. But it's just, there's no parallel between the drug commercials that they have. And it's, people are going to listen to these tobacco commercials. Are they going to listen to these marijuana commercials as well? This is your brain on drugs. It's so ludicrous. We actually have to take a break right now. So we'll be back shortly after this break.
good friend Dean Becker from KPFT and Cultural Baggage is on the phone. Hello, Dean. How are you tonight?
Well, hello, Buford. Thank you for this chance to talk to your audience. Hello, Clay and Bindu. I wanted to talk about a couple of things. You've been talking a lot about marijuana tonight, medical marijuana in particular. I wanted to point out that last week on the Cultural Baggage Show, we had two of the primary speakers from that Cannabis Therapeutics conference on our show. Had an interview with Dr. Donald Abrams and as well with Dr. Donald Tashkin. The Century of Lies show last week featured about 8 voices, including Jeff Jones, Dr. Stephen Hosea, a philosopher or two, and a lot of notables from that conference. And this week on Century of Lies, our guest was Jeff Blackburn. Now, a lot of folks may know him. He was made a lot of noise during the Tulia situation. Got a lot of people released from prison, some 43, I think it was, originally released. And he's also started a new endeavor, well, I don't know how new it is, but relatively new, the Texas Innocence Project. And they're working through restudy of DNA and other evidence to get people released that have sometimes been locked up for decades with because of the jihad, if you will, of the district attorneys around Texas. And then today on the Cultural Baggage Show, our guest was Jack Cole. He's the Director of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. We're a group now of about 10,000 members worldwide. And a story caught my eye today. You talk about zero tolerance in America. It seems there was an 8-year-old in grade school who was caught sniffing his paper, which had magic marker fumes, I guess, emanating from it. And he was suspended, sent to the principal and suspended for substance abuse. Let's see, two of my favorite speakers, if you will, Mr. Norm, I can't think of his name, the gentleman who's coming to the 420 Fest.
Norm Kent?
Norm Kent. I mean, he is a powerful speaker. I want to recommend to folks that they come out and listen to this man. He explains it, clarifies it, pulls the veil away, and shows you exactly what we're dealing with. And it's going to be a powerful presentation. I was going to say two of my favorite bands will be playing at the 420 Fest. That's Guy Schwartz and the New Jack Hippies, as well as Sean Reefer and the Resin Valley Boys. If you want to come out and have some fun, if you want to just kick it around and really enjoy yourself, I urge you to come to this event. That's this coming Saturday. I think it begins at 7 o'clock. Features, I think 7 bands total. I'll be there speaking on behalf of the Drug Truth Network, if you will, my 2 shows I was already talking about. I want to say something. I'm a medical marijuana user. I have a doctor's recommendation. I'm a sacramental preacher, and I want recreational users to be free of law enforcement interference. But, more than anything, I want to gut Osama bin Laden's fattest cash cow. I want to destroy those cartels in Mexico and South America. And I want to be able to eliminate the reason most of these violent street gangs exist, which is selling drugs to our children. So we have to work together. Please listen to these folks. They have great advice, great websites for you to visit. I would urge you to visit mine if you get the chance. You can tune into all of these shows I just listed. They are at drugtruth.net. You can hear my shows on KPFT radio, the 2 half hours on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 11:30 to noon. And that's at 90.1 FM. Folks, we own the moral high ground. It's time we made use of it. It's time we did the right thing, got involved as citizens. And with that, Buford, I appreciate this time.
Thank you, Dean. And I want to comment on something Dean said there. And this was sending money to the Taliban in Afghanistan and the cartels in Mexico and Colombia. Not too long ago, the White House announced that they were asking for $1.5 billion to send to Mexico to fight against the drug cartels, which is really pretty ironic because it's the American drug laws that fund the cartels to the tune of about $30 billion a year. So if America's really serious about getting rid of the drug cartels in Mexico or the opium growers in Afghanistan, what they need to do is remove the black market tax reduced the price of heroin from $100,000 a kilogram to $30 a kilogram, which is what the equivalent of what it was when it was legal before. Reduced the price of cocaine to the price, basically, of chewing gum. And guess what? The bad guys go away. Al Capone doesn't sell beer anymore. Anheuser-Busch does.
Right.
Now you were...
It's just plain sense. I mean, you keep these black markets going. You incite violence, and the people that are involved with marijuana are basically nonviolent people. And the most violent ones are the police against the people.
Well, the police against it. In fact, there is a Minnesota bill that has been already passed by the Senate. It has headed for the House floor. It's suspected to pass there at the House as well. It's a medical marijuana bill. And the only thing that's going to keep it from passing is the governor promises to veto it. And why? He says it is not palatable to law enforcement in Minnesota and to the police force there. But what would make it palatable to the police force? They don't say. I guess just if it were never enacted in the first place.
I think that's something that we need to mention. And I've been pretty hot-blooded about the local district attorney's race here in Houston. Texas passed a law allowing localities to use citations instead of arrest in nonviolent. Our district attorney said, if you do, I won't prosecute them, and the county simply rolled over. The governor's job is not to do what the police tell him. The police are an instrument of the people. It's their job to listen to what the people want and then do what they're told to do. The police have absolutely no business at any time, anywhere, for any reason, attempting to make policy.
Right.
Excuse me for getting that.
They're there to enforce what is written.
Right.
Yeah, and what is written should be the will of the people.
Right.
And people talk about making the police's job easier. I'm sorry, damn it. If you look at the Constitution, we have a Bill of Rights. And if you read through that Bill of Rights and take it article by article by article, the whole purpose of the Bill of Rights is to make the police's job harder. Mm-hmm. If you want to make the police job easier, let them bust into people's houses without reason or warning. Let them torture defendants until they confess to anything. But our Constitution, the whole structure of our government is make the police's job harder, protect the individual's rights. So I'm sorry. If a governor vetoes a bill passed by the legislature because it would upset the police, then that governor needs to be kicked out of office.
No, I agree.
And I think I've just given my editorial early tonight.
No, that's excellent, but it's absolutely true. I mean, this isn't a malicious state. We shouldn't be answering to the police where we get pulled over in our cars and we're automatically afraid of what possibly they could do to us. They should be, they should be on the alert.
The police should walk up to you and say, "Excuse me, sir, may I be of assistance to you?" They shouldn't pull you over and say, "Up against the wall, MF."
Really?
Okay, it's time to take a break and for me to calm down. And after the break, maybe I'll be civilized again.
This makes for good television. That was awesome.
Okay, we're back again. After my little over-the-top outburst. So,
Quite all right.
Would either of you like to chime in here at the moment?
Just that, yeah, we definitely have kind of a law enforcement problem. This isn't a malicious state. They should be helping us. And the best way that you can arm yourself is by being as calm as possible. Of course, try not to carry anything on you, but if you do, know your rights, know your constitutional rights, and know what to say and how to say it to a police officer. They're going to try to play as many mind games as possible to get you to self-incriminate. And come on, remember your Fifth Amendment rights here. You want to say as little as possible to keep you being detained, and you want to say as little as possible from your incriminating yourself. There's an excellent video and an excellent organization called flexyourrights.org, and they have a video called Busted, A Citizen's Guide to Police Encounters, which describes police encounters at your home, police encounters if you get pulled over, and police encounters if you're just picked up on the street. Now, of course, this isn't going to work all the time. This isn't a 100% guarantee, but it certainly is a way not to make things worse for you.
I have to put in a little bit of a fine print at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, there's a disclaimer. Ira Glasser narrates it from the ACLU, and he says this is not an end-all, be-all.
This was produced by a former policeman. It's a common sense approach to how to deal with the police. It's not necessarily the best legal advice.
Oh, no, you're thinking of the one by Barry Cooper.
Yeah, Barry Cooper.
Okay.
But even the one you're thinking about also is much more of a practical how to deal with the police, and it's not necessarily the best legal advice. If you
don't you think it's kind of pathetic that society has to learn how to deal with these few individuals? Isn't it more practical for the policemen to learn how to deal with us? There's so much fewer of them.
Well, they've already learned their way, which is police brutality. You know, and it's how to avoid getting into that police brutality situation.
I've never been into a police brutality situation at all, ever.
Right, well, you know how to hold your own and how not to self-incriminate.
In the 1980s, 1970s really, after the first round of bad Los Angeles riots, there were several serious studies done of the Los Angeles police in particular, who under Parker really got to be a pretty bad group. And one thing they found that in the city of Los Angeles, a significant number of the police were veterans of the combat arms of the military, and over 30% of the Los Angeles policemen had been born in a rural area of one of the Deep South states. So part of what has happened in this country is that the police forces have to some extent acculturated themselves to an aggressively based subset of our culture, and they tend to use aggressiveness and domination as a means of dealing with people, and it leads to serious confrontations and bad results.
Very much.
So to change the mood a little bit, I understand that you attended Oaksterdam University yourself.
Yes, I did. Oaksterdam University. It was a 2-day course, and it's more politics than anything else. Didn't really get other than 2 hours of growing tips. But this is the kind of stuff that you'll see in Oakland. Here's a Order magazine that they sell clones to marijuana, and their featured strains is Shiva Skunk, Bubblegum, Deep Chunk, Strawberry Cough. Now, each one of these they do for a different reaction on the body. This is the kind of stuff that we can do right here in Texas. We have got to unify and get together and tell our politicians to stop what they're doing. And it's that simple. That's what they did in California. We can do it here.
Now, It's not quite that simple. And the reason I say this is that during the last session of the legislature, a medical marijuana bill was being presented in the Houston legislature that had a pretty good possibility of passing, but one person who was chair of the committee looking at it on her own blocked the bill from even being considered. So we not only have to worry about the substance of the bills, we also have to worry about the rules the legislature uses.
And personal preferences.
So that you've got to become involved in the point of learning the nuts and bolts of the process as well as the law. And we have another caller. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
You know, I can barely hear you. I don't know. Is my call coming through clear to you? I got my volume down on the TV.
Oh, yes, you want the volume down on the TV, but you're loud and clear.
Okay. I heard someone say that they passed a law in California for, I guess, whatever you're trying to grow there. I lived in California for 35 years. I was born here. I went out there. I worked out there, lived out there. And I came back here to take care of some in-laws who were in the 90s. And this place is about 25 years behind California. Anything that you're hoping to put through for here.
That says we've caught up some lately.
Excuse me?
I said that says we've caught up some lately.
Well, yeah, some, a little bit, but still they're pretty far behind. And I know that everything from the courts, the police departments, the people that enforce the laws, and even in the schools, there seems to be a prepared propaganda that they seem to be spreading around here that they're not for too much change, I don't think. But good luck with trying to get something passed, okay?
Okay, thank you. I think, the word I have heard the most during this last year in talking about politics is change. I mean, everywhere you look, someone's saying change. And it's not just the candidates that are saying it, the people and the voters are saying it. And my own feeling is that people in general are looking for a change now. And frankly, in 1964, the Republicans in this country decided they wanted to be a French political party instead of an American political party. They forgot the coalition, broad-based politics that all American parties have had and tried to focus themselves in on a narrow, one ideology, conservative, right-of-the-aisle French party. And they were successful with it for a while, but I think it's jumped up to bite them now.
It's run its course.
And the thing that American politics has always had from the very first political parties in the 1790s is that the successful parties have all been broad coalitions of people with different views who would come together and reach reasonable conclusions on issues. And I think I'm seeing some of that in this election, that people are concerned not about, are you a true believer, but instead they're asking, what can we do about problems? And if I'm seeing it right, yeah, that is a big change going on. And we're about to run out of time, so I'll give you each a soapbox to end up on.
Sure, thanks. I mean, there's been an air of pessimism that's kind of been going around with our callers, and that's surprising because usually the people who tune in are the most behind the cause and right on with what you're saying. And it's kind of surprising because you can be as pessimistic as you want, but until you actually step up and go to your legislator's office and start writing these letters and start making those phone calls, how can you say what's going to happen or not? It's true that we have very many legislators who say, oh, I'll never vote for this, even if my opinion, Bohack, Culberson, perhaps even Lamson, no matter how great of a guy he is. But when we get those people behind him that are their constituents, and when they finally start hearing about how many people care about this issue,
right.
That's when they'll start changing.
It takes people calling their office, writing the letters, in order for them to start changing, because Their only concern is getting reelected.
Exactly.
And remember this, every one of those elected politicians has an office in his or her home district. And you can call and make an appointment and go see them personally, look them in the eye across the desk and say, why are you opposed to whatever you want? Make them answer you face to face, and you'd be surprised. It's hard to look someone in the face and tell them, I'm going to vote against you no matter what.
Right. We even have that opportunity right now. You can call your legislators on the phone. Just visit ssdp.org/call to reinstate financial aid for college for people who want to go to college but have had a previous possession.
I only have a single issue in my head legislatively, and that is to get medical marijuana through in this state. I don't want to have to move to California or anywhere else. I want to stay right here. This is my home. And I think it's a damn poor excuse for these politicians to want to have to send me out of my own state. My own adopted state.
So start legislation, don't make Clay move.
I don't know, that one might backfire on us. How well do your neighbors like you these days? We're down to one last minute. First, most important, join us at 420 Fest.
Yes.
This Saturday at 6 o'clock at the Last Concert Cafe, 1403 Nance. Be careful who you vote for this fall. Be sure and contact all of your elected representatives. And more important, talk to your neighbors and your fellow voters about these issues, because their votes count too. So
That's right.
We've had another fun, informative evening. Thank you for the calls. Your calls help make the show. We're here to respond for you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Present policy of drug prohibition is hopeless. It is hopeless. It will never get better. Literally, victory today is being defined as slowing down the pace of defeat.
We ought to listen to science and medicine when it comes to whether marijuana or any other substance